I never thought I'd be an MMA fighter. Not that long ago, I didn't even know what MMA was. In fact, when I first started training, my husband had to tell me what MMA was before I started. And that's actually how I got into it. My husband thought that I would enjoy it and that I'd be really good at it. And as it turns out, he was right. So before MMA, I was a marathon runner. I ran competitively in school, and after university, I went on to run several marathons. My fastest time was 3 hours and 27 minutes, which I'm very proud of. And one day it came along that I thought I actually needed to get some cross training and not just focus on running all the time. I needed some strength and conditioning if I really wanted to stay healthy and fit and improve. But I thought going to the gym sounded too boring. So I started looking at other options at CrossFit, at other group exercises classes, and a gym not too far from us had started advertising women's MMA classes, which is when the conversation started. My husband said I should try it. He said, Lindsay, you would love it. You'd be so good at it. And so he explained it to me and all the different aspects of it. And I said, really? You think I would be good at that? You think I would enjoy that? Because you have to understand, before this, I was the person who would see UFC on television, and I'd think, what is wrong with these people? Why are they doing that to someone else? Why would you put yourself in the cage to have that done to you? And why would you pay money to watch people do this to each other? And here I am. So I decided to give it a go. I tried out the classes and I loved it. It was addicting. Now, at the time that I first started, I tell people I started 4.5 years ago. But actually, technically, it was 5. Because when I first started, I had signed up for a 3-class trial at my local gym. I went to 2 classes and then found out that I was pregnant with my child, my daughter. And thought that that probably wasn't the best time to start MMA for the first time ever. So I stopped there. And it was about a year later, when I was 6 months postpartum, that I actually properly started MMA. That's when I signed up and started my training, really. And it was very difficult. I was a new mum. I had this new baby, and I was barely holding it together. But let me tell you, those classes were my sanctuary. Those classes were my time to breathe, to step away, and for 1 hour, just forget all of my stress and just focus on something that was for me, that I loved. And that was part of the hook of MMA for me. It was 1 hour that was just for me. I remember asking one of the coaches there if other women trained MMA as well. And he was like, yeah, absolutely. Yes, they do. No. There was one other girl there the first night that I went, thank goodness, because that made me feel a lot better. And she turned up maybe a couple of other times and then disappeared off the face of the earth, and I never saw her again. And the odd girl would trickle in and out, and nothing really stuck, and it was me. For the first couple of years, it was me. And I trained with all the guys, big or small. And when I say big or small, I mean there were like 95 kg guys who were just like big and tall. And somehow I ended up partnering with them, and I'd end up doing guillotines and takedowns and all sorts with these big, massive guys. And it worked. You know, it was a good group of guys, and I worked hard, and I just told myself it didn't matter. I was tough. I was fine. I could do this. No problem. And sometimes that was true, and sometimes it wasn't, but you adapt. So fast forward, I'd been training nearly a year, and I started watching MMA movies with Zach. And we watched the movie Warrior, which if you haven't seen it, recommend it, loved it. It was great. And I watched this movie and I saw them getting in and fighting in front of these huge crowds, these awesome cages with great rings and these great stadiums. And I thought, I want to do that. That's what I want to do. And at this point, I hadn't even had an interclub yet. I'd just been training for a year. I was a small little girl in this room full of like massive men, as I've already emphasized. But I just knew, I thought, I want to do that. And it was the very next day that my coach asked me if I'd ever want to do an interclub. Now, I'd been asked at that point by a lot of other people if I'd ever actually compete or fight, and I'd always said, no, that's not for me. I just do it for fun. I do it once or twice a week, just for fun. But Zach had always said he thought I'd give it a go at least once. He was pretty confident that I would want to fight at some point. He knows me. So, again, fast forward, I watched this movie. The next day, my coach says, would you ever want to do an interclub? And I was beside myself, you guys. I was so excited, and I thought, yes, absolutely, yes. And I said, am I ready? Am I good enough? And he was like, yeah, absolutely. I went home, I was so buzzing, keeping in mind that I was a marathon runner before this, so my outlet has always been running. I went home and I ran the fastest 6-miler of my life, and I just went home and I just bolted out the door and went. And I was like, this is it. I'm gonna fight. And I never knew how far I would go with it. I still don't. I still want to keep going, and I hope I have a really long journey ahead of me still. But at that point, I was just really excited to have any fight at all. And I started training even more, I started running even more, and this became my obsession very, very quickly. Fast forward a few months later, my interclubs went very, very well, and we decided it was time to have a proper fight. So we started looking for my very first amateur fight, and I put everything into this, and I knew that this was it. I knew that I was gonna win. I knew that I had this. But it doesn't always go the way you expect. I got in there and I performed like I had never performed before. And that is to say, not well. I remember getting ready for that fight, and I'd been told that for your first fight, most people get this big adrenaline dump, all the adrenaline spikes, and then at some point in the fight, you get this massive dump and you crash. And the nerves get to you and it eats away at you, and it always gets to people for their first fight. And I thought, that's fine. I'm not gonna have that. So instead, I'm gonna shut all of the nerves off. I'm just gonna close them off. And I did that. I did that really well. I did it so well, in fact, that for that fight, I was numb. I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel nervous. I didn't feel excited. I didn't feel anything. I just went in numb. And naturally, I did nothing the way I had trained or drilled leading up to that fight. And I learned a lesson that day. I learned the importance of feeling those nerves and, instead of closing them off, rechanneling them. Understandably, I was pretty upset after that fight. I was angry. I was sad. I was disappointed. I knew that I was supposed to win. I should have won that fight. And I was so hard on myself. We all are, a lot of times. But I learned so much from that fight, and I learned so much about how to handle myself and the importance of mindset when you go into things like this. In this sport, mindset is everything. So I went back to the drawing board and I kept working, and I started putting rituals and practices in place to protect my headspace when I trained and when I fought. And I went on after that to my next fight with BMF, and I won by second round TKO. And from there, I was fortunate enough to be offered multiple title fights and defenses, and within a year of that first loss, I had become Battle Arena's European strawweight champion and defended it, and BMF's very first female champion ever, and was preparing to go pro. And we're still going. We're still on that journey, and I hope in a couple of years to be able to do another one of these and share how my journey has progressed from here, because I'm not even close to done yet.